me from, what was your major in college? It was sports?
Exercise science and creative writing. Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Was that a self-design major? Okay.
I started out with creative writing and figured out pretty quickly that I might not be able to make a living off of that.
Yep. So how do you go from creative writing and exercise science to executive director of a Boys and Girls Club?
A lot of really great people in my life telling me to do what I was passionate about. After college, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to help people. Didn't really know how nonprofits worked, but I knew they were in the helping industry, so I joined AmeriCorps, which is like the domestic Peace Corps. And after that, I was pretty much sold that I knew the nonprofit sector was where I wanted to land.
Okay.
Came home after 2 years in AmeriCorps and found out Chuck Cooper was one of the main people opening the Boys and Girls Club, and I had known him when I was in high school. He was my athletic director, and started as program director. The opening came up for executive director, and I thought, I'll try that. And 3 years later, still trying.
Well, by all accounts, you're doing pretty good.
Thanks.
So I remember, I think I heard Chuck and Tom Maurer give a presentation, and I thought, Boys and Girls Club, isn't that what Orville has? And then I thought, well, I wonder how that's going to work. And like next thing I know, there's a building, and there's, so it's gone great guns.
Yeah, it's amazing that we started just in the cafeteria in the library, and then last year we opened the space, have over 100 kids a night, and I can't believe we're less than 5 years old. But that's in part we have a lot of really great staff, very, very hard workers who at the end of the day just care about kids. We're all figuring it out together.
So what was it about working with kids? I mean, because nonprofits, that covers the whole realm.
Sure.
So what is it about kids? Because they're not always easy.
No. My mom was a teacher.
Okay.
And then I worked at a summer camp for 3 or 4 years, and really enjoyed getting to know kids and working with that group dynamic, and really seeing them grow. And then it's also a chance to be silly and have fun at your job. And because they're continually growing and continually learning new things, you never have the same day twice, and I really enjoy that part of it.
What did you do with AmeriCorps?
Oh man. My first year I was in New Hampshire.
Okay.
And I was a development assistant. So my main project was to develop a 5K for the Mental Health Center of Greater Manchester. And then the second part to that was working with clients with severe mental illness on things like nutrition and physical activity, because SMIs, severe mental illness, and chronic diseases like heart disease, diabetes, all of those really fun ones, usually coexist. So that's where the exercise science came in, and I think that's part of the reason I got the job, was because I knew how to design some of those exercise plans. But it was a whole new experience doing it with people with, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder. So definitely.
That's an interesting population.
Yes, yeah. And then the next year was a team-based program.
Okay.
So I traveled around with a group of 8 people all over California and Washington. And we we went to 4 different nonprofits. And we worked there for 6 to 8 weeks. We did trail maintenance. We worked at a camp. And then when Hurricane Sandy hit, we were actually some of the responders for disaster relief. So we flew to New Jersey for that. A lot of exposure to different communities and a lot of nonprofits. So it was pretty great.
Where do you think your desire to help other people comes from?
My parents.
Okay. Tell me about them.
Well, like I said, my mom was a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
She retired a couple of years ago.
Did she teach in Worcester?
Yes, she did.
Okay, what'd she teach?
She was an intervention specialist.
Ah, okay.
So Parkview, and then when they consolidated the school, she came to Edgewood.
Okay.
And my dad did the Peace Corps, which is why I got interested in AmeriCorps. And then he also has been volunteering with Little League Baseball in Worcester for 20-some years.
Okay.
So very community-minded people, very empathetic people. Taught me that it was important to care about others and to care about your community.
Why come back to Worcester?
Well, volunteering doesn't pay a lot. So I finished up in California and had to come home.
Mm-hmm.
AmeriCorps helps you pay off your student loan debt, so I was debt-free, but
Okay.
I didn't have any money. But once I was here and found Boys and Girls Club, it was such a unique opportunity to be on the ground level of a nonprofit, just from day one, to help develop the programs and to have that sort of input into something I don't think I'm ever going to experience again in my life. So once I got involved with this, this new thing, it was pretty hard not to want to stay. And after developing relationships with the kids, it's pretty hard to walk away from that. Worcester was also where I grew up,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt it was important for me to give back to this community because it has given me a lot and a lot of perspective and a lot of opportunity.
In the early days of building a nonprofit, were there ever days when you thought, maybe this wasn't the best decision I've ever made?
I've been told on more than one occasion that I'm the one who sees the flaws in the behind the scenes, and other people don't really notice it, which I take a lot of comfort in. It's been a learning experience, to say the least. However, I met my husband through Boys and Girls Club.
How did that happen?
He's a teacher here at Edgewood.
Oh, okay.
5th grade. He was one of the teachers who volunteered to help tutor after school. So I was his boss. But he was really good about giving me perspective on the bigger picture when things would go wrong. Because they did. Because it was new. So I think that helped a lot. And again, like I've said, at the end of the day, it's about the kids, and when you put all the hard stuff aside, that's what it needs to be about, and that's what keeps you going.
I read Chuck's letter of nomination. Do you live here? Because one of his big points was, she's always here. She's like the last one to leave, and Do you have a life outside of here? Or how does that happen? Because I realize nonprofit work can become all-consuming.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what do you do when you're...
When I'm not here.
Yeah, really. Assuming there is that time.
It's, you have to make the time and be intentional about it. I'm not always great at that, but when I do, I'm a runner, so involved in the running community here.
Okay.
And then I think I'm just a glutton for punishment, but I just started grad school in January. So that's keeping me busy right now.
What are you doing in grad school?
Master's of Organizational Leadership.
Okay. Where at?
Malone.
Okay. Why? Because you had a few spare moments you wanted to fill? Or?
I had some AmeriCorps money left over.
Uh-huh.
And I knew I wanted to get a master's degree. Because a lot of this was learning on the job, I felt like a master's would actually help me put a little bit more context behind the leadership.
Okay.
Maybe help me organize a little bit better so I'm not learning as much on the job and more so, if I can be proactive about it instead of reactive. I'm hoping that this is going to help with that.
If you weren't doing this, what would you do?
Oh, man.
When you get an award, you have to answer the hard questions.
In my imagination, in a perfect world.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. I wasn't doing this. That's hard. When I first got out of AmeriCorps, I know I was looking at jobs out west in outdoor leadership. What I'd really like to be is an Olympic athlete, but I think that time has passed.
Oh.
Just with the whole sports thing. I've always enjoyed sports.
What'd you play?
I was a runner.
Okay.
Cross country and track, and I played basketball for a couple years.
Okay. Now, my understanding is like distance runners, you can still be competitive.
Yeah.
Way past the age of 20, so.
Boston Marathon has been a goal.
Okay.
But as I get busier and busier, it might be put off a little bit.
How often do you run?
When I'm intentional about it, it's usually 4 to 5 times a week.
How far? I got a feeling it's not just around the block, which would be me.
4 to 6 miles.
What is it about running? I like to ask runners that.
I feel like I can solve all the world's problems when I'm running. You just have the time to think and be by yourself. I mean, I don't take my phone, so I don't have to answer any phone calls. And when you're physically pushing yourself, it's difficult to focus on, I guess, all the tough stuff at work. You do think through it, but then it comes to a point where you get so tired, you're just like, oh, I gotta finish this run. So that's also, relaxing.
Every time I see someone running like on the Burbank Road, at Burbank Road, I want to slow down and yell, I have a car, do you want to ride?
My husband doesn't like running very much, but he'll come with me sometimes. He brings a backpack and he picks up cans.
Oh,
so then we go recycle them. So for him, he has to make it into a game in order to get motivated.
So I know this sounds like a job interview question, but where do you see yourself 5 or 10 years from now?
Club it just keeps growing. And I guess talking to other people who are directors at Boys and Girls Clubs, it's not always that way. But I'd love to see it continue to be that way. And 5 years from now, I'm hoping our program is going to be up at the high school. In 5 years, we'll have at least 1 or 2 classes that have been club members since the 5th grade, and we'll be graduating. So that's so exciting to be able to see those kids succeed, and hoping that we can help get them there.
Who comes here after school?
Well, a third of Edgewood is registered.
Okay.
So 1 in 3 kids is a club kid.
Okay.
But part of our mission statement is for our kids to reach their full potential.
Okay.
And that is different for everybody who walks through that door.
Okay.
So, yeah, there's